and I'm also one of the presidents. I'm a rising junior at Northwest High School, and thank you so much for all of you who are able to attend this important presentation.
Hi, my name is Shivani Kumar, and I am a rising senior at John Champ High School, and I am the vice president for the KCS youth team.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shreya Rajesh. I'm an incoming junior at Northwest High School in Germantown, Maryland, and I am the secretary of the KCS youth team.
Hi, my name is Vishnu Menon. I'm an incoming freshman and I'm a club officer for KCS Youth Club.
Hi, my name is Gia Marilel. I'm a rising junior at Loudoun County High School, and I'm the communications officer for KCS Youth.
Hi, my name is Catherine Tenney. I'm a rising freshman at Poolsville High School, and I'm event coordinator for KCS Youth.
Hi, I'm Barsha Chandran. I'm 16 years old. I'm a rising junior at Marriotts Ridge High School, and I'm an event coordinator for KCS Youth.
Hi, I'm Ishan Punikal. I'm a rising freshman at Athelton High School, and I'm a club member for KCS Youth team.
Hi, my name is Janu Manila. I'm 14 years old. I'm an incoming freshman at Loudoun County High School, and I'm an event coordinator for KCS Youth.
Hi, I'm Kiran Kaya, and I'm a rising freshman, and I'm a KCS club officer.
Hi, I'm Parvati Nambiar. I'm a rising junior at John Champ High School, and I'm a KCS Youth Club officer.
Hi, I'm Roshan Alakar. I'm a rising freshman at Glenelg High School, and I'm a communication officer.
Hi, my name is Shiva Menon. I'm a rising freshman, and I'm also a KCS Youth Club officer.
Hi, my name is Sudhir Shivam. I'm 13 years old. I'm an upcoming 8th grader at Mount View Middle School, and I'm a secretary at the KCS Youth Club.
Hi, I'm Hima Shali. I'm a rising freshman at Damascus High School, and I'm a club officer for the KCS Youth team.
So our agenda for today is to go over mental health, the stigma behind it, risk factors affecting mental health, statistics of it, and the brain and biology. Then we're going to move on to issues and coping methods of anxiety and stress, depression, eating disorders, and bullying and peer pressure, and the fear of failure. Then we'll also talk about technology and electronics addiction. Then we'll move on to mental health wellness, and we'll move into takeaways and an action plan, and we'll finish this off with a Q&A with Dr. Krishna. I would now like to introduce our special guest, Dr. Nitin Krishna, who is an American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology certified doctor and has spent more than 10 years as a physician researcher in the field of neuroscience. His knowledge and experience is very valuable to us as he has a lot that he can teach us about. We are so honored to have you here, Dr. Krishna, as it's not every day we have the opportunity to speak with a Malayali psychiatrist. It seems we're having some trouble with the mic. So Hello?
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to this really, really important event discussing about mental health. And I really am. First of all, I have to say I am amazed at the slides that is made by all the participants. It's phenomenal. I think half the battle of mental illness is already overcome with the amount of knowledge, effort that is put into this, and organizationally you've done an amazing job. I really want to congratulate all of you. Exceptionally wonderful. I really am impressed. I think I noted down a few things. Maybe I'll catch up at the end and maybe discuss a little bit more about certain things. But first and foremost, to beat mental illness is insight and knowledge, and that starts right here with our kids and our future generations, and this is exactly what we ought to be doing. I'm honored to be here, and I'll be extending my commitment to one and all of you to support and in any ways help in any time. And after the conference, I will hand out my information to organizers and Ranjini to kind of distribute, so I'll be available for anybody.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Krishna, for your valuable advice and knowledge. Let's begin to talk about mental health. You may be asking, what is mental health? According to the WHO, the World Health Organization, mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, and it can be able to tell them how to cope with their normal stresses of life. It includes our emotional, our psychological, and social well-being. It can affect our thinking, our mood, and behavior, and it is super important. If we keep shunning it, we will not be able to live healthy. But if we are able to accept our mental health and understand our mental health, we can be healthy, we can cope with stresses of our life, have great relationships, and express our emotions effectively. Next slide. Unfortunately, there is a huge stigma regarding mental health and in the mental health field. A stigma is a negative stereotype about a group of people, and it can really be hurtful. This stigma can include thinking that people who are mentally ill are dangerous, they are irresponsible, they cannot make life decisions, and they're childlike, and the worst one of them all is people believing a mental illness or a mental disorder is fake, when it's truly not, and it needs to be recognized and it needs to be accepted. Next slide.
There are numerous risk factors that affect a person's mental health, and not everyone is affected the same way. To touch on a few of these many factors, the relationship you have between yourself, your family, and the people you interact with affects your happiness, well-being, and even physical health. Living in conflict or in a toxic relationship can be more damaging than living alone. And negative social interactions can increase the risk of depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. Abuse, trauma, and neglect, especially seen in the maltreatment of children, can contribute to negative behavioral health outcomes in adolescence and adulthood, with long-term consequences such as low self-esteem, depression, relationship difficulties, and an increased risk for developing an addiction to drugs and alcohol. In someone experiencing issues with employment, education, or income, they can be constrained by their social hierarchy and living conditions. They may resort to unhealthy lifestyle choices, which takes a toll on their overall health. Males and females are typically seen to deal with their emotions differently, so in some cases, gender as well as age plays a role. Unhealthy lifestyle choices like eating unhealthy, smoking, drinking alcohol, or even not getting enough sleep or exercise can become harmful to one's mental and physical health. Next slide.
So why should we care? Mental health has been seen to affect 10% of children from a very young age, and many of which have not had the proper help they need. Depression is the most common mental illness in the United States at 7%. At the age of 24, 3/4 of mental illnesses are established. Not only that, 1 in 5 adults in the United States experience mental health conditions. That is 46.6 million people per year. Next slide. Like mentioned in the previous slides, mental illness does not discriminate based on race. In fact, 1 in 5 Indians suffer from depression, and 95% of Indians suffer from extreme stress. 0.9% of the Indian population has high risk of suicide. Even with these numbers, there are only 0.3 psychiatrists allocated towards 100,000 Indians, and only 0.06% of the government budget is towards mental health. Most of us have extended family or relatives in India, and it is important that we share what we learn about mental health and bring awareness to our families and relatives everywhere. The pandemic has made the world a similar place for everyone, with the fear of the unknown and uncertainties. According to a study done by the World Economic Forum on how India perceives mental illness, 56% of people think that people with mental illness talk to themselves, and 40% of people think that these people are crazy or mad. Although these perceptions do not speak for everyone in the Indian community, it is important that we help people realize and recognize that, like mentioned in previous slides, mental health is extremely important and needs help. Next slide. Later on in the presentation, we will be covering eating disorders. However, we would like to share some shocking statistics about them. Eating disorders are the #1 killer out of all mental illnesses. Unfortunately, over 70% of people won't go and seek treatment because of the lack of education and stigma over eating disorders. And as a result, nearly 1 person per hour dies of eating disorders. Within the teen generation, my generation, anorexia is the 3rd most chronic illness. Eating disorders are extremely dangerous and important for us to understand. It's like the saying, every ocean starts with a drop of water. Eating disorders can lead to other mental health issues and should be taken seriously on a daily basis.
Now let's get into the brain and biology and how it affects our mental health.
It always blows me away. Your brain is the most complicated organ in the universe. There is nothing as complex as the human brain. Nothing. It's estimated we have 100 billion nerve cells, and each nerve cell is connected to other nerve cells, not in a one-to-one connection, but up to 10,000 individual connections between cells, which means you have more connections in your skull than there are stars in the universe. Information in your brain travels at about 268 miles an hour, unless, of course, you're drunk. And even though your brain is only 2% of your body's weight, it uses 20 to 30% of the calories that you consume. So of the breakfast you had this morning or the lunch you had this afternoon, almost 1/3 of it goes to feed 2% of your body's weight. Your brain is the most expensive real estate in your body. On average, you lose 85,000 brain cells a day. And what we've discovered at the Amen Clinics is you can accelerate the aging process with your behavior, or you can decelerate it. How exciting is that? The health of your brain also decelerates innovation, or it accelerates it.
As you can probably guess, there's a science behind why we feel the way we do. There are chemicals in our brains called neurotransmitters, which send signals allowing us to react properly to a situation. Different neurotransmitters have different functions as well. Serotonin, for example, is a neurotransmitter that allows us to be happy. If there's an increase in serotonin, we'll be more elated. And if there's a decrease in the neurotransmitter, we'll feel more sad. When people fail to produce the needed neurotransmitter, they develop what we call mental illness. These are some examples of neurotransmitters. Now let's talk about depression. Serotonin is the chemical that causes happiness, so it makes sense depression occurs when there's a low production of serotonin in the brain. People with depression have a hard time producing the needed serotonin to be happy, and thus feel sad and go into a slump. Antidepressants can rebuild serotonin levels, but it isn't a long-term plan as it only boosts your mood temporarily. Let's move on to anxiety. In people with anxiety, the prefrontal cortex, which is in charge of decision-making, goes offline and the sympathetic nervous system becomes active. This triggers people's fight or flight response. In anxiety-free people, their brain fires up with reactions like anxiety in dangerous situations, as it was crucial for our survival in the old days. For people with anxiety, however, their brain acts like this in normal situations, and their brain fires up, making it hard for them to effectively make decisions, and they react with anxiety. Now let's move on to eating disorders. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that relaxes and motivates, and it has been shown that levels are altered in people with eating disorders. People start feeling urges to purge as they can't control what they're eating, and people start eating uncontrollably or start starving themselves. They have inhibition control, which is similar to people who self-harm, shoplift, and abuse substances.
Now that we know that mental health is a combination of your emotional, psychological, and social well-being, let's talk about how the differences in biology affect men and women differently. In women, mental health can impact their periods, and their periods can affect their mental health. And that's a huge factor for women's mental health. For example, PMS, or premenstrual syndrome, and PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, are both conditions that can be caused by depression or anxiety, and often make these issues worse during your menstrual cycle. While PMS presents a collection of symptoms that is physical, such as bloating and headaches, or manageable emotional symptoms such as irritability, PMDD is a severe depressive disorder that occurs premenstrually. It is absolutely critical that PMDD is treated without delay because women can have suicidal thoughts and can actually act on these if they suffer from PMDD, but it is often ignored. Men don't have a biological equivalent to a period, but in both genders, hormones play a big part in their mental health. Hormones are molecules produced by the endocrine system that send messages to the various parts of the body, and they help regulate bodily processes like hunger and blood pressure. The human body produces hundreds of hormones, but four of them have a very direct influence on the brain. The thyroid regulates energy, estrogen is a mood modulator, progesterone is nature's anti-anxiety hormone, and testosterone is a hormone that deals with mood, motivation, and strength. For men, fluctuations in testosterone levels can cause aggressive behavior, mood swings, irritability, impaired judgment, anxiety, and depression. In women, high levels of estrogen can aggravate or cause symptoms related to tension and anxiety, and low levels of progesterone can cause periods of rage followed by depressive episodes. In both men and women, fluctuation in the level of melatonin can cause depression. Next slide, please. Now that we talked about how biological differences affect mental health, let's talk about the stigma and differences between men's and women's mental health. In general, women are more likely to be supported in their journey to recovery and are more likely to be diagnosed with a mental health issue. The stigma around women's mental health is mostly based around the idea that they created their own mental health problems, while with men, it is seen as unmanly or shameful to seek help for mental illness or to even be talking about it. Men are often told to man up or to just deal with it when they come forth with mental health problems. Women and men also tend to face different mental health disorders. Women tend towards depression, anxiety, and eating disorders, while men tend towards substance abuse or antisocial disorders, which come with their own set of stigmas.
Now let's get into mental health issues that people face and how to cope with them.
The most common and frequent kind of stress is known as acute stress. This is the kind of stress you might have before a big test or a job interview. Chronic stress is more of an intense and longer version of acute stress. The third level of stress is known as episodic stress. Individuals who experience this kind of stress basically accept that it's part of their life, and they don't do much to change this. The fourth level of stress is known as post-traumatic stress. Post-traumatic stress is a result of not being able to get better after a traumatic experience. Anxiety is a general term for several disorders that cause nervousness, fear, apprehension, and worrying. These disorders affect how we feel and how we behave, and they can manifest real physical symptoms. Mild anxiety is vague and unsettling, while severe anxiety can be extremely debilitating, having a serious impact on daily life. The dangers of stress and anxiety include drug abuse, mental illness, personality disorders, and changes in blood pressure. Next slide.
There are different causes of stress and types of anxieties for different people, so it's important to pay close attention to how you feel if you show signs of either. Some symptoms of stress and anxiety include rapid breathing, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, or feeling like your mind is blank, and insomnia. If you feel a combination of any of these symptoms quite often, you should immediately seek professional help from a counselor or psychiatrist. Some ways to manage stress and anxiety are limiting your caffeine and alcohol intake, writing down your feelings in a diary, identifying your stress and anxiety triggers, and talking to a friend. Remember to take time to focus on yourself. Next slide, please.
Depression is an illness that affects how one acts, thinks, and feels. Depression is no one's fault, and it can be caused by a combination of genetic, biological, socio-environmental, and psychological factors. There are certain risks or triggers that make a person more susceptible to depression, such as family or relationship problems, chronic illness, or major life changes. Knowing the risk factors early on can help a person from falling deeper into depression and can help them avoid the dangers, such as heart disease, eating disorders, and suicide. Next slide. Symptoms of depression vary from person to person, but some common ones include feelings of hopelessness, angry outbursts, lack of interest in hobbies and normal activities, suicidal thoughts, laziness, and aches in your body. One thing you can do to manage these symptoms is to set realistic goals for yourself. It's important to remember that the road to recovery from depression is a long one. It varies from person to person, and you can't expect your mood to improve overnight. One thing you can do, however, is to try to challenge your negative thinking. You should replace your irrational, pessimistic attitudes with positive ones. Some other things you could do include exercising or spending time with trusted family or friends. If you've taken self-help steps and still find your depression getting worse, you should seek professional help. The doctor may recommend antidepressants, which is medication that works to improve the way your brain uses certain chemicals that control mood or stress. Or he or she may suggest psychotherapy. Psychotherapy, also known as talk therapy, is a type of counseling which can help people with depression. There are many types of psychotherapy, such as interpersonal or problem-solving therapy, and these sessions can take place one-on-one or in a group setting. Next slide.
Did you know that every 62 minutes, at least one person dies as a result from an eating disorder? Eating disorders affect a person emotionally as well as physically. Shruti Shankram, a PhD student at Miami University, who is studying transdiagnostic mechanisms in eating disorders and suicide, wrote an article about eating disorders within the Indian community. She says, as an Indian American, I have witnessed the culture surrounding mental illness within my community. Rather than being seen as a real illness that warrants the same attention and level of care as a physical ailment, mental illness is often dismissed and not legitimized. Even when one's mental illness is acknowledged, their family might try to explain it as a biological cause, such as rationalizing it as a thyroid dysfunction. Due to a myriad of sociocultural factors, South Asians face unique barriers to seeking treatment for eating disorders. People struggling with an eating disorder often become obsessed and have a bad relationship with food and or weight. The earlier a person is to get treatment, the greater the likelihood of a full recovery. The three most common disorders include anorexia nervosa, bulimia, and binge eating disorder. There are currently over 30 million Americans who have eating disorders. Eating disorders have the highest mortality rate than any other psychiatric illness, and they affect all races and ethnic groups. 95% of ED cases are found in teens to individuals in their early 20s. Half of eating disorder victims often go on to meet depression criteria. A large stigma around eating disorders is that it's just a diet gone wrong or that it's a lifestyle choice. Another large stigma is that it only affects teen girls, though this is not the case. The reality is that eating disorders are very complex and serious psychological disorders that cause significant physical, mental, emotional, and social impairment. Research shows that it takes an average of 8 to 10 years for someone to seek help, and yet early help seeking is crucial to contain the impact and duration of this illness. We need to break down these barriers and the stigmas surrounding eating disorders within our community and mental illness overall, and so that they can get the help that they need. Next slide.
The image here shows a 10-year-old boy that was diagnosed with anorexia. His parents did not take note of how he was restricting his diet and exercising excessively, and did not think of an eating disorder because it was not common in boys his age. Anorexia is an eating disorder categorized by an extremely low body weight or a false image of gaining weight. Most people do not see anorexia as a dangerous illness, but has the highest mortality rate of any mental disorder. Some symptoms of anorexia include starvation, dehydration, and irregular heart rhythms. A lot of times, anorexia isn't just about food. It can be an extremely unhealthy way to try to cope with emotional problems by making you feel in control of something in your life. Some of the causes of anorexia may be either psychological or environmental. Some people have personality traits that make them strive for perfection, and since our culture emphasizes being thin as a part of success or worth, people might feel pressure to become thinner. Those suffering from anorexia should tell a trusted group of people about their diet so they can realize they have the eating disorder. It's better if the illness is diagnosed early on by people recognizing the symptoms they are showing. Then they should seek professional help from a doctor or a therapist. Most people who have anorexia keep their diet a secret, which keeps them and the people around them from realizing the problem. Confiding in other people is the best way to start treating anorexia, but people must take steps on their own as well. Creating meal plans and getting lots of sleep and exercise helps your body get proper nutrition and can help keep you healthy. Next slide.
Bulimia is an eating disorder in which individuals tend to binge eat and then attempt to avoid weight gain by excessive amounts of exercise and purging by sticking fingers down their throat and making themselves throw up. Another way that they do this is by taking laxatives so they can flush it out of their system. Treatment may sound simple and very obvious, but the hardest part will be taking action and consistently making the active decision to stay healthy and accountable. If you are unable to personally solve this problem, you should let your family know. Although this is definitely the hardest part, by making your problems known, you will be held more accountable and having a higher chance of controlling this disorder. Next slide.
So binge eating is the most common eating disorder there is. Anorexia can lead to binge eating, but it doesn't include the purging consistent with anorexia and bulimia. 40% of obese people suffer from binge eating. Binge eating is an eating disorder where you tend to eat even though you know you're already full. So some symptoms of this disorder is having a difficulty concentrating, feeling depressed, frequently dieting, low self-esteem, or feeling ashamed or guilty about your eating style. So ways to help binge eating is by focusing on what you're eating, diet less, get a good night's rest, and exercise when you wake up. Next slide.
Bullying, peer pressure, and fear of failure are all things that we have heard of, but sometimes we don't understand what exactly they are and their severity. Especially for bullying and peer pressure, our schools provide extensive education, discourage, and take action against them. Fear of failure is something that is not as widely discussed until it leads to drastic outcomes such as depression or even suicide. One of the reasons why one develops a fear of failure is a pattern from childhood. hypercritical adults, which cause children to internalize damaging mindsets. No, hypercritical adults cause children to internalize damaging mindsets. This makes them establish fear-based rules. This causes children to feel the constant need to ask for permission and reassurance. Another reason may be perfectionism. For perfectionists, failure is so terrible and humiliating that they don't even try to succeed. False self-confidence can also lead to fear. People with true confidence know that they won't always succeed, but a person with fragile self-confidence avoids risks. Next slide.
Ways to cope with bullying and peer pressure include telling a trusted adult, walking away from the situation looking confident, and choosing your friends carefully. The picture on the left shows the differences between a healthy friendship and an unhealthy friendship. Unhealthy friends often are the providers of negative peer pressure, which people follow in order to be accepted by their social group. Healthy friends, however, will help you cope with and combat bullying and peer pressure. Ways to grow out of a fear of failure include acknowledging your feelings and developing realistic thoughts with a growth mindset. Next slide.
What is the role of electronics in mental health? There's a stigma that electronic addiction is similar to, or in many ways, the same as substance abuse addiction, because individuals struggle to quit and it is usually teens who are affected by it. On the other hand, people neglect the seriousness of this issue and its effects. Schools nowadays are in great need of the use of numerous electronic devices to continue education, which is the initiating factor for abusive electronic usage. Moreover, people with this issue refuse to get help because they don't think that others will be able to understand them and understand their mental health. Many who suffer from this addiction and instability claim that the use of technology is to help people stay in contact while remaining distant from the real world. Feel free to listen to Dr. Christy Kane talk about how the electronics impact the brain. Next slide, please. Technology itself, the video game or social media, is beneficial to humanity when it's used right. The usage of it, how much, when, and where needs to have a limit, as well as a common understanding of the consequences if gone unchecked. Let's watch a video about the importance of abolishing child technology addiction and establishing bonds with the real world.
Right now, you can choose to intervene. You can choose to create healthy technology habits within your family. Right now, you can choose to moderate screen time exposure for your child. Help them understand and create adventures beyond the screen. Get them outside, get them running around. Get them playing different activities or games inside the home so that their brains and their bodies can develop to their full potential. Right now, you can choose to start the technology conversation and never stop talking about it in your family. Keep those lines of communication open with your children so that when they encounter something that they've never seen before and don't understand what it is, they come to you because you previously had that discussion and it's part of your everyday life. Right now, you can choose to have the sex talk earlier than you ever expected to have it before. Because you don't want your child learning about healthy sexual habits from hardcore pornography that they're watching online and then making assumptions about. Or what they're hearing about sex from their friends or their friends' siblings. You need to start that conversation. Right now, you can choose to start to assess your child's technology habits. Is it at a point where you can help your child step away from technology and experience other parts of life? Or do you need to bring in a professional that can help your child with a potential addiction problem? Right now, you can choose to explain to your child why they will never again bring a technology device to bed with them. When children bring the devices to bed, they do not sleep. They do not get the required hours of sleep for their minds to fully develop. Help your children be the best that they can be. Right now, you can choose to never bring out your phone again at a meal. You will be modeling appropriate technology use and behavior in a social situation for your children, and you will help create bonds that are so important between family members. Right now, you can choose to be present for your children, and your children will be present for you. Thank you.
Electronics tend to lead individuals into an isolated lifestyle, causing people to struggle with normal social and domestic interactions. Also, with addictive electronic usage, individuals start to experience high anxiety levels, sleep deprivation, and face the consequences of a sedentary lifestyle. From the advice given in Dr. Christy Kane's discussion, parents, on the other hand, can offer guidance to their children to prevent them from falling prey to electronic addiction and mental instability. By showing them that you care, parents can agree or compromise to a common goal with their children and set up reasonable rules and regulations. However, parents should be able to monitor their child's electronic usage and its mental effects by respecting the child's privacy and establishing boundaries. Next slide, please.
Here are some tips to stay generally healthy physically and mentally.
Urgent public health need. So we need to start someplace. I would recommend 3 minutes a day. When human beings first evolved on this planet, none of us were brushing our teeth. And yet, today, we all do. This is not part of our genome. This is a learned behavior. And it doesn't take much to start these mechanisms in the brain to change. So we can do this when we're doing other things. We can do this while we're commuting. We can do this as we're literally brushing our teeth. We can do this as we're having our first cup of coffee or tea in the morning. We can do this as we're walking. This can be incorporated in routines of our daily life. So we can nourish our mind, and through it we can change the world. We can reduce implicit bias that gets under the skin. This is something that we've shown can occur with strengthening connection. We can increase school achievement, and we've and others have shown this with training and awareness. We can reduce healthcare costs potentially by cultivating well-being, as the connections that I've illustrated show. We can cultivate a strong sense of purpose, we can reduce distraction, and we can increase productivity and
in our community, having a lack of understanding or preconceived stigmas about mental health are major barriers to promoting mental health when people are seeking help. In order to spread awareness while trying to overcome stigmas in our community, you can make a difference by doing the following. First, parents can have early childhood interventions to ensure the healthy development of a child's social and emotional skills. Supporting this will ensure that kids have the support to develop skills that are crucial for their education and life, while also feeling like they have someone to talk to when they want to seek help. Reminding children of risky behaviors such as smoking or drugs can help them ingrain a healthy mindset. Second, you can support socioeconomic ideals to help those who are more prone to mental diseases, like people with disabilities and those who are in poverty. Many growing studies have linked economic inequality to poor mental health. To stop the constant risk of mental health issues in our communities, people should support non-health policies, employment policies, labor market regulation, part-time sickness absence, and protective employment policies. We should also support anti-discrimination laws that will help those whose mental health suffers due to the unfair treatment of others. We can also bring more awareness in our community with mental health promotional activities and programs, which include community development and violence prevention programs. By supporting these events, you are advocating for public health, as these events help build individual development, community trust, and psychological strengths in the community. Although, with this current situation, many of these community outreach activities are difficult to do, we can start with normalizing conversations about our mental health more in our households. Now, let's watch a TED Talk from Dr. Daniel Amell,
Judges
who
and
talks about
defense
how to
attorneys
best rehabilitate the troubled brains of criminals so that their mental health could be improved and we can have a better functioning society.
Our help to understand criminal behavior. To date, we have scanned over 500 convicted felons, including 90 murderers. Our work taught us that people who do bad things often have troubled brains. That was not a surprise. But what did surprise us was that many of these brains could be rehabilitated. So here's a radical idea. What if we evaluated and treated troubled brains rather than simply warehousing them in toxic, stressful environments? In my experience, we could save tremendous amounts of money by making these people more functional, so when they left prison, they could work, support their families, and pay taxes. Dostoevsky once said, "A society should be judged not by how well it treats its outstanding citizens, but by how it treats its criminals, instead of just crime and punishment. We should be thinking about crime evaluation and treatment." So after 22 years and 83,000 scans, the single most important lesson my colleagues and I have learned is that you can literally change people's brains. And when you do, you change their life. You are not stuck with the brain you have. You can make it better, and we can.
As the video just showed us, we can help rehabilitate misled people by focusing their mental health. On a personal level, each of us needs to be responsible for our families' and friends' mental health. Let us take a look how each of us can play a role to support each other. Show that you care and take action. It may be uncomfortable at first, or you may have to get out of your life. So I'll help save a life. On this slide, we've included tips from supporthuman.org. Please visit them for more tips on how to help. First, if you see someone is having a difficult time, start by reaching out. Maybe through a text, even if that person makes you feel. Ask questions in tones that show that you care and be ready to listen. Questions like, "Are you dealing with this difficult time right now?" Or, "Is this a good time to talk?" Make sure that you are listening and do not do most of the talking. This person-to-person interaction will help them open up about their mental health. Second, create a safe and judgment-free zone, which means to telling them that whatever they say does not change your view of them. And for you, don't expect everyone's answers to be the same. People who suffer mental health issues are not monoliths. Even if a condition has the same name as someone else's, each of them might experience it differently and have unique views on what is going on with them. Lastly, be patient and get professional help if needed. There are good mental hygiene practices that you can follow along together, such as creating and eating a nutritious meal. Next, Roshan will explain the benefits of eating right and nutritional psychiatry.
Can you improve your mental health by what you eat? Nutritional psychiatry is a discipline that focuses on the use of food and supplements to provide essential nutrients as part of an integrated or alternative treatment for mental health disorders. Now please watch this next video with Professor Aaron Siegel as he explains what the best diet for humans are. Next slide.
They also show, in our view, why the current nutritional paradigm
that searches for that one best diet is inherently flawed. The best diet for humans does not exist. Our responses to food are personal, so our dietary advice must also be personal.
Micronutrients. Micronutrients are one of the major groups of nutrients your body needs. They include vitamins and minerals. Vitamins are necessary for energy production, and minerals play an important role in growth and bone health. Micronutrients can be divided into 4 categories: water-soluble vitamins, fat-soluble vitamins, microminerals, and trace minerals. Micronutrient deficiencies can lead to poor physical and mental development in children, vulnerability or exacerbation of disease, or even blindness and general losses in productivity and potential. Next slide. Although we need micronutrients, that's not the only thing we need. Macronutrients, also known as macros, are nutrients that the body takes in large amounts and are needed daily. There are 3 types of macronutrients: proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Some of the carbohydrates we consume is converted into glycogen, which is a type of starch. Glycogen is stored in the liver and muscle to use later as an energy source. Proteins. Every cell in the human body contains proteins. The basic structure of proteins are amino acids. You need proteins for your body to repair cells and create new ones. Protein is crucial to building/developing bones, muscle, skin, blood, and more. Fats. A small amount of fat is an essential part of a healthy, balanced diet. Fat helps our body absorb vitamin A, vitamin D, and vitamin E. These vitamins are fat-soluble, which means they can only be absorbed with the help of fats. Now let's hear why Dr. Neil Barnard wishes to go back in time and what he wants to tell his father. Next slide.
This is now U.S. government policy. It's called MyPlate, and it does look in some ways similar to what we'd sent them a couple of years earlier. Fruits and grains and vegetables, and they have this thing called the protein group. Now, the protein group could be meat, but it could be beans or tofu or nuts or anything that's high in protein. It doesn't have to be meat. In fact, there is no meat group anymore in federal guidelines. There's a dairy group there, but to their credit, soy milk counts. So things are improving. Now, so far what we've talked about is getting away from the saturated fat that's in cheese and bacon and meats, getting away from the trans fats in snack foods, having the vitamin E and the colorful foods. And there's one more step. It's not all food. There's something to say about exercise. At the University of Illinois, researchers brought in a large group of adults, 120 of them, and they said, a brisk walk 3 times a week. And after a year, everyone went into the laboratory for a brain scan. And they measured the hippocampus, which is at the center of the brain, and it's the seat of memory. It decides what should be let through into memory and what should not be let through. And it turned out that this organ, which is gradually shrinking in older adults, suddenly stopped shrinking. And the exercisers found that their hippocampus was a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. It was as if time was going backwards. It reversed brain shrinkage. And on memory tests, they did substantially better. So I've devised my own exercise plan. I'd like to present it to you. I do this 3 times a week. Arrive at the airport as late as possible, carry massively heavy luggage, and just run for the plane. Now, at the University of Illinois, they had their own ideas, and their idea was a little simpler. Do a 10-minute walk, and do it 3 times a week. And then next week, let's do a 15-minute walk. And the week after that, 20, and all they did was add 5 minutes a week until they got to 40 minutes. And a 40-minute brisk walk, this is not a trudge, but it's a good brisk walk, 40 minutes 3 times a week is all you need to improve memory and reverse brain shrinkage. Very simple.
We've presented a lot of information so far, so it's reasonable if you've forgotten some of what we said. So from here on, we'll be giving you some general tips to have a healthy lifestyle. This is important as these tips can make you healthier in general, and it isn't specific to any one illness.
Although a surprisingly large amount of people are affected by mental illness, it is still a topic shrouded by stigma and discrimination, not only in society, but also from families, friends, and employers. Half of all mental disorders can begin as young as 14, and 3/4 start by the age of 24. Remember that in the US alone, only 41% of people with mental illness received health care or other services. This is due to the fact that society has stereotyped views on mental illness and how it affects people. Many people believe that people with mental illness may be susceptible to violent tendencies and dangerous behavior, when actually they are more at a risk of being attacked or bringing harm to themselves rather than being a threat to other people. The situation is only worsened with the media's portrayal of mental illness. Even if a person with mental illness is viewed in a positive light, the media tends to create misunderstandings that have very real consequences. Inaccurate depictions of a mental illness could lead to false beliefs, confusion, and conflict surrounding the illness. This makes it harder for people with a mental illness to reach out and get the help they need, which only leads to bigger health issues. Untreated mental illness could lead to the risk of heart attack, strokes, and a variety of other health problems. Next, let's see how people who are of a voting age can help advocate for mental health.
When voting, also vote for mental health. Looking at our graph, it shows that 5.7 million people in the US are affected by Alzheimer's, and their health funding is $1.36 billion. And 3.5 million people in the US are affected by schizophrenia, and their health funding is $245 million. But when you look at eating disorders, 30 million of the US are affected by eating disorders, but their health funding is only at $32 million. Vote for candidates that believe that eating disorders should get much funding as schizophrenia or Alzheimer's or any other disease. From district attorneys to members of Congress, every elected official plays a role in determining what services are available to people with mental illnesses. There are many issues that mental health advocates care about. Most of them fall into 3 categories. Number 1, promote innovation. Mental health advocates support investing in and accelerating research to better understand the brain and improve treatment options for a wide array of mental health conditions. Improve care. Mental health advocates support expanding health coverage with fair and equal coverage of mental health substance use care. And number 3, support recovery. Mental health advocates also promote stable housing for people with mental health problems. Next slide.
You should practice good mental hygiene to keep yourself mentally healthy. One way of doing that is by surrounding yourself with good people and by connecting with others. Doing so will ensure that you make many friends, and that can help you when you feel let down. Studies also show that just 10 minutes of socializing with others can improve memory and test scores. You should also talk about your feelings and get help when you need it. This can help you when you feel troubled, and it's also just a general way to maintain good hygiene. Another way to maintain good hygiene is by taking care of yourself. You can do this by being active, eating well, drinking plenty of water, getting plenty of sleep, and getting sunlight. All these things boost chemicals in your brain that put you in a good mood. You should also do things you enjoy and follow your passion. If you don't do that, you can become grumpy and unhappy. Another thing you should do is take breaks and relax, especially when you're stressed. This can strengthen your ability to develop resiliency, the ability to recover from an illness. Finally, you should also practice meditation or prayers. Doing so can improve your state of mind and outlook on life. Next slide.
Now, even if you can't do all that, you can still incorporate this one simple thing into your daily life. Adopting an upright sitting posture in the face of stress can maintain self-esteem, reduce a negative mood, and increase a positive mood compared to having a slumped posture. Furthermore, sitting upright increases the rate of speech and reduces self-focus. Now, sitting upright may seem like a simple behavioral strategy, but it helps to build resilience to stress. We are at the end of our presentation, but have an important session with Dr. Krishna next. Before that, we will watch a quick video on how you can decide if you need therapy by Dr. Emma McAdam.
So assuming that you're wondering if you need therapy, here's a couple of definite yeses. Like, if this is the case, you need therapy. Number one, if you're suicidal, okay, obviously go get some help. Number two, you're not functioning. Your emotions or your relationship problems are getting in the way of your ability to do school, your work, or your relationships. So for some people, this might look like you're unable to leave the house, or you're so afraid of bridges that you won't drive to a location you need to get to. If your mental, emotional, or relational issues are interfering with your functioning, you should go get some help. Number three, you think you're fine, but everyone around you is saying you need to get some help. That's a good indication that you're blinded to your own issues, and seeing a therapist could really help you. Now, here's some reasons you might need therapy, or you could benefit from therapy, but the costs and the benefits, you'll have to weigh them carefully. Your emotions overwhelm you and get in the way of your functioning. You've had an intense experience that keeps you from being able to concentrate or function well. You're using substances to cope. Some people call this self-medicating, as if that makes it okay. But if you're dependent on drugs, alcohol, food, or addictive behaviors to manage your emotions, then you could really benefit from getting some help. Here's one people don't think about a lot, but physical symptoms. So if you have stomach aches, headaches, or frequent illnesses, or you have illnesses that you can't explain or just won't go away, these might have an emotional aspect to them that's contributing to or causing them. You're getting bad feedback at work, or you've been fired repeatedly. Your relationships are strained. You've got a persistent problem that you've tried over and over again to overcome, but nothing you've tried has worked. So a therapist is a specialist in the change process. They know how to help people go from step A to B to C and help them get to where they want to be. So if you've got a persistent problem, keeps coming back, you keep trying to change it but failing, try getting a second opinion on it. One thing that many people don't realize they can go to a therapist for is helping someone that they love. So if you have someone you love and care about, and you think they need help, but they won't go in, then you can go to a therapist yourself to get ideas, resources, training, education, and support as to how to help them. On the other hand, if you're making progress towards your goals, if you're able to change yourself, if you're working, even if it's slowly, toward resolving each of your problems little by little, and you feel like you have the resources and support to do that, you might be able to get by yourself. If you're functioning at work, your relationships are pretty good, and you're not experiencing physical problems, then perhaps you don't need a therapist. Therapists are professionals in the change process, and there's really good research out there showing that around 80% of people who go to therapy experience significant improvement in their presenting problem. So when I get asked, how do you know if you really need therapy? I'm inclined to ask some questions in response. How long do you want to experience this problem before you ask for help? What are the costs you're worried about? Do they outweigh the benefits? What are you missing out on in your life that's bothering you? Or would you like to know about resources and solutions that you're not even aware of in order to help you solve your problem? I hope this video helps you decide if you need therapy. Thanks for watching. Take care.
All right.
So I know some of you may have some questions on what we presented as well as other topics. So we're now going to open the floor to a Q&A section where you can ask questions in chat and we'll read the questions aloud. So I would like to invite Dr. Krishna back to the floor to take some questions and provide us with some knowledge. And if you would also like to consult with Dr. Krishna privately, then you can visit the website on your screen now and schedule an appointment with him.
All right. So well, first of all, I am I'm impressed. I think you guys did a phenomenal job. I'm just it's amazing. I think if each one of you in this chain here can go and disseminate to 4 other people, I think slowly we can do grassroots level changes on really making a difference in this world. Um, I really like noted down some things. I just wanted to kind of kind of go through those bullet points and maybe like kind of summarize and open it up for questions. So based on what was presented, it seems like I want to make sure that there are two sets of variables that make one vulnerable to mental illness. One is a genetic unmodifiable or non-modifiable risk factors, which is sex, age, genetics, family history, various other factors that genetics, you can go and change it. And then there is another variable that's called as modifiable risk factors. So I really want to really emphasize that those are the things that really we can do to change, but we cannot change the genetic aspect. We are all unique, we are all different. Each one of us have a different genetic makeup we inherit from our parents and our pedigree. So all this is said and done, we may not fit into all these categories just like how it is described. We all react differently individually. So I think being really in tune to yourself that something is not right, that is the first and foremost aspect, is that knowing that I am not feeling well, something is there, and having the courage to reach out to somebody and speaking to them about it and processing it. And that is the most important aspect that I feel can eradicate mental illness. Insight into one's struggles. Why am I feeling this way? What is it about certain things in the last few days, or what has compounded me to feel this way? So insight is very, very important. And first and foremost for insight is to know education. That's what you're doing now. You know what is eating disorders, what is depression, all the discussion and deliberation. The more you talk about it, the more clear it becomes to you what is the problem, and then you can start mitigating those variables. I want to give you an analogy of what mental illness is. I don't think you can actually. I don't think we should wait for you to have a mental illness or be at a place where you need to seek help. We all have to be ready to discipline in order to like prevent it from happening. So if our parents give us a small plant and ask us to water it every day, you water it every day, the small plant becomes a sapling. You can see it has got leaves and it's very green and vibrant. Exams comes by, or your KCS Christmas event comes and you're very busy with your practice and stuff, you forget to water the plant every day. And then you see that for the first few days, the plant is okay. After a week or two, the plant is really like started to look really bad. But after that, you realize you start fixing the plant. It's very difficult to like get the plant back to how it was. So knowing that I need to do this every day in moderation is very important. So mental health is very important to be ready to like fix that. So the first and foremost things you should do that is modifiable that you can fix is good sleep. Sleeping is very, very important. I think one of the doctors talked about exercise increasing the brain volume. Very, very true. The brain volume increases if you exercise 40 minutes to an hour every 3 to 4 times a week. Brain damage reverses. The brain regrows if there is a damage. So in addition to that, sleeping 8 hours is extremely important. Every day, 8 hours of sleep is very, very important. And then diet is very important as well, avoiding those kind of, toxic materials that can harm your body. These three variables are very important to kind of really reverse the brain assaults on the brain that we incur. So just like the analogy I put about the sapling being really dry and damaged, but you revive it. But towards the end of its life, it may develop something more dangerous and it'll die. So Alzheimer's is similar. Compounding risk factors of mental illness that is not treated end up becoming risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. It is predicted that a large population of the world is going to end up getting Alzheimer's disease. So the world is not going to be able to handle Alzheimer's disease as we go. The other aspect I wanted to know is that why is mental health very important is because there is an when the mental illness is not treated adequately, or you let it grow into a serious condition, one really reaches a point where they try to hurt themselves, or suicide becomes a variable. There is that inevitable, like there is no reversibility of suicide. It's the 10th leading cause of death in the US overall, claiming more than 47,000 lives in the last, CDC reported it in 2017. Out of that, there was a huge peak in the age group between 15 to 30, which was very, very scary. There are many hypotheses as to why that is. You guys alluded to some of them. One other thing I wanted to really bring up was that you guys talked about number one killer being eating disorders. You're right. Eating disorders has the highest number of risk factor for suicide. 70% of people who end up having severe illness, there's a chance that they attempt or succeed in suicide. The second largest condition that none of you brought up is bipolar disorder, which is very, very common in Indians and high functioning families. If you are in this group where you are in science club, dance, singing, you go to Doctors Without Boundaries, you're in everything and you're a high achiever, there is a small chance that you're indulging in increased goal-directed activities, decreased sleep, impulsivity, irritability. There is a chance that there may be some bipolarity in people. Bipolar affective disorder is very, very common in the world. So that is the second biggest killer amongst mental illness. You guys I love the fact that you touched upon women's mood disorder. I love it. That's absolutely right. Estrogen, premenstrual syndrome is very, very severe. Just a small a pill during those 5 days can mitigate risk factors for PMS or PMDD, or even postpartum depression. Women end up having postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, which is after they give birth. So that has to be prevented by maybe oral contraceptives, or even a small dose of serotonin, SSRIs, or you guys talked about serotonin. There is a medication that can help you overcome that. And I think one of the speakers also mentioned about men's mental health, which is aggression. They're right, absolutely. Men, younger boys, young adults develop aggression, oppositional defiance, like irritability, mood swings, punching holes in that's depression, manifestation of depression due to the hormonal differences. What else did I note down? I think I'm going to, schizophrenia, somebody mentioned about that as well. Schizophrenia is 1 to 2% prevalence in the population. Indian community is not immune to it. Schizophrenia is a condition where one feels paranoid, or they feel that they are being attacked, or persecutory delusions or hallucinations. So you can hear voices and see things. That's another common condition. The other, I think you guys covered everything. I'm not going to bore you. It's already 7:20. I will let you open up the floor for any question. Oh, I see. Can you elaborate on bipolar? Absolutely. So bipolar affective disorder is a spectrum of condition. It's a very highly genetic condition. 80% of families who have one parent end up having bipolar disorder. It's the extremes of mood. One can be extremely happy when during summer, during spring, when it's sun, they are buying new houses, buying new cars, spending money, not sleeping, speaking really fast, flirting, fighting. So anything they do become excessive. after a few weeks, they're like crashing down, severely depressed on the other end of the spectrum. So family and friends say, what happened to you? You were the party, talk of the town, and why are you so, they have this fluctuation. They become very difficult to deal with. They fight with their spouses or partners and have very intense interpersonal instability and emotional ability, crying, angry, yelling at people, very impulsive, saying things that they don't mean but end up hurting others. Bipolar is very, very common. I think, am I supposed to go through the questions? Schizophrenia is a long-term disorder involving breakdown. Am I answering these, or can we don't talk about it?
Yeah, if you feel comfortable answering any of the questions in the chat, then go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the people, most of the speakers that you portrayed did talk about the resilience of brain. Just like I told you about the plant, the sapling. It is really like, it is very suffocating the plant by not giving its nutrients for 7 days. It was able to survive for 7 days. Our body is very, very resilient. Only if you abuse it to the maximum is when it actually gives in and becomes damaged. But it still can be revived. It still can be, there's resilience in the brain. And like Dr. Amen said, the brain has so much potential. It's the highest real estate. It's consuming a lot of energy. You can revive. And I think the strongest studies are exercise. People who can repeatedly use their thighs, walking, running, biking is very, very important. 40 minutes, cardiovascular exercise, diet, sleep, doing, and friendship, right? Having that social connectedness is very important. I have to be honest, I have seen a lot of I go to social gatherings and I feel like our kids I have seen this trend where they're together, but they go to separate rooms and talk to each other via video game. I don't think that is, you need to really bond, that human connection. You need to fight, you need to make up, you need to break up, you need to get angry, jealous. I don't think we should rely overtly on technology and I've seen people chatting to each other next to each other, and those are all things that can make you vulnerable. The more you talk, the more you discuss, the more you can rely on somebody, trust somebody, you can overcome mental illness. And everything in moderation. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. The speaker said, moderation, moderation, moderation. The other thing I want to stress to young people like yourself, sexual trauma is a big, big variability. You are in US, you are in the most advanced, most liberal community where there is discrepancy or inequitable acceptance of sexual behavior in culturally dispersed families. You may encounter a situation where you are forced to do something, or somebody forces something on you. That trauma can brew into much, much more damaging. Somebody spoke about acute trauma, acute stress disorder, and PTSD. PTSD is a very dangerous thing. You are not sleeping, you are having nightmares. If you keep dreaming about an instance that happened on a date or on a isolated situation, you keep waking up with that same nightmare of this guy or a girl forcing himself or herself, hurting or assaulting or threatening, and you keep avoiding that person. You don't want to go in front of that person. You're taking a different route to avoid coming in contact with that person, especially if that person is in your own home or in your neighborhood. It is the most dangerous mental illness that can evolve into much complicated temperamental changes, because you at an young age are being forced to adapt, and you are slowly shaping into something that can be very dangerous. So I think, and one last thing, the last video clip asked if who should do therapy. In my opinion, everybody should do therapy. Having a neutral person who has no stake in you and going and opening up your heart for half hour, and I think almost all the parents have insurance. If you can have one therapy session in 6 months or 3 months, I think it is a luxury we ought to use. It's like having a Tesla and not using it. So I think everybody should go get a therapist. Even if you don't have a problem, just go say hi and tell them, I just want you to be on my team. Let's build a team. I want you to be on my team. I'll come say hi to you every month. And it's that willingness to go to a strange person, open up, process your emotion. I think everybody ought to have a therapist. I also use the analogy of a lot of times to my patients is that if you buy a new computer, say you buy a new laptop and you're able to download movies, there is 4 gigabyte of RAM or whatever space in the computer. You keep downloading movies, watch it and don't delete it. After a year, you have downloaded thousands of movies. The computer RAM is going to get slow. It's going to not work as efficiently. You got to watch the movie, process it, and delete it. Our mind is just like that. Every situation, every interaction that could be embarrassing, that could be traumatic. If you ignore it, it becomes like a movie you watched, didn't process. It's in the folder. You have to address that. You have to go to the therapist or friends, right? I mean, for instance, say in school I fell down and a group of girls laughed at me. I have that in my mind. I got up and just walked away. I never talked to anybody about this, so it's always there in my brain, in my how do I say, in my it's in the processor. Few years later, my friend comes and say, "Oh my God, I fell in my office. There were these girls." Like, what happens then? I say, "Oh my God, that happened to me. That the exact same thing happened to you. I felt so." What happened? You guys processed it. And in your mind, you're saying, the same thing happened to this guy. It's a normal reaction. I'm okay. You deleted the file. And that you have emptied that space. So it's not, so I'm just giving you a simple example, but there is a lot of complexity. But talking to somebody, processing, deliberating discussion is the most important thing. I think I'll keep talking, so I'll be quiet.
No, that's fine. Thank you. It's really informative. So we're getting more questions if you want to look at those as well.
About back in the day, sometimes it felt like you're living on their own world and connected. Yes, I mean, that is a constant struggle in between generations. I think there is that's something that we have to always reconcile. I think when I first came to US, I think I traveled by an airlines. There was a smoking section in the airplane. Now, fast forward many years ago, that's not a thing. So we are evolving, generations are evolving. But I think we as parents, as much as we want to, we want to suck up things or like we want to use the same benchmark, I think we got to be dynamic and keep changing and be liberal. We are in the epicenter of change. And I think, I'm not sure I answered the question, but do you have online sessions? Yes, right now we are completely not doing any on-premise sessions. We do online sessions. I do want to have we do have family therapy as well. I do want to have a disclaimer. I'm not seeing patients any longer. I'm mostly doing administrative work. However, we have 25 doctors and 25 therapists. So we have a team of 50 people. We have a diverse group of teams. Indian, China, like we have physicians from every ethnic background. So you can certainly, I can connect you with any of them if you need. We work with insurance companies. We do not charge the families, only co-pays. Yeah, I mean, we don't have any criteria. Anybody can, just like I said, you could just say, hey, I just want to just say, do an intake and just do a healthy visit checkup, and you could just say, I want to come to see a psychiatrist or therapist every year, just like my physical therapist, my primary care physician. So there is no criteria. You are the decision maker whether you want sessions or not. There is a screening. We do a NIH validated screening. We apply questionnaires that give numbers, so we can tell you, you have your depression is here, your anxiety is here, your trauma is here. So we can give you a standard score that you can take and you can apply on it. It's a self-assessment. You can do the test by yourself, and you can seek help. I think the slides 33, 34, 35 were very informative. Those are all things you should be doing. It's reported per HIPAA. It is private. Yes, absolutely. Anything you do in a medical setting is HIPAA, which means its health information is protected. It's so meaning I take that information to my grave. I will not give it to your mom, dad, unless unless there is safety concerns. So somebody brought up safety concerns. So that the therapist brought up safety concerns. If it is suicidal or homicidal ideation, then we breach that because we want to protect the person and the community. So we breach that. That's the only time. But apart from that, any information that you write or give us, it goes to our grave, unless you ask us to transfer it to somebody like primary care physician or another doctor. It's secure, it's private. We never discuss. And the other thing I want to know is fiduciary role, which means if you come to a doctor or a therapist, you have to know that I will give you recommendation as my interest is, your interest is above my interest. I will always think for my client, what can I do to safeguard my client? So we always have the fiduciary responsibility to think on behalf of the welfare of our client. So fiduciary and confidential is something that us as professionals, psychiatrists, I think most of all physicians and therapists have taken it very seriously. What if we pay? Yeah, you can pay out of pocket. I think, I'm not sure. It's about how much it's about. I think for a therapy session, I think it's about $110 or $150. I have to check with the therapist. I think maximum could be $150. But if you're a new client, it's a longer session. They spend time to get to know you. So that's a little bit more expensive. Do you help grieving? Yes, we do help grieving. There is grief counseling. There is groups actually for that. We have 5 locations. We are in Towson, Maryland, Columbia, Maryland, Annapolis, Maryland, Gaithersburg, Maryland, and Baltimore, Maryland. We have 5 locations. We see about 200 patients a day. We have about 4,000 clients a month. We are very growing very fast. We are expanding to Eastern Shore, and we have plans to use our technology storefront to make it more like Talkspace or Headspace. However, we will charge the insurance. If you go to Talkspace or other places, you have to pay $50 or $80 per month per user just to be a member. So we are kind of planning to move towards those e-commerce platform. However, you still retain your insurance and can still have your doctor.
All right, thank you. That's all the time we have today for questions. Thank you so much, Dr. Krishna, for answering all these questions. You really took the stage there. And let's move to Ryan to close out.